So, thank you guys so much for joining. I am here with Dave Shrine, one of the earliest and best Periscopers out there as far as business use of Periscope, I should say. And yeah, just wanted to go ahead and chat with you and stuff. We met at the Arizona Periscope meetup, the first Arizona Periscope meetup that you helped put together. I think Christian was part of that as well. And I want to thank you first for sitting down and chatting with me today. And second, just kind of ask like, hey, how did you get into entrepreneurship? And let's kind of start there.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. It's always a lot of fun to get to come hang out and just kind of talk about specific things. And, you know, when it comes to entrepreneurship, and being an entrepreneur, I've got a lot to say because every single day, I mean, you know, when you put yourself out there, every single day is like a classroom. You learn something new, you grow, you figure out a better way to do something better than you did it yesterday. So man, yeah, it's always a lot of fun. So I appreciate you wanting to take time with me. That really means a lot. As far as how I got into being an entrepreneur, I don't know if I would ever go so far as to say that it's like either in you or it isn't, but either you've developed it or you haven't. And so one of the things that I found is maybe some people might not necessarily want to be an entrepreneur. It's like, man, I like my job. I like the people that I work with. I like what I do day in and day out. But there's just something inside of me, this spirit that it's like, I want to do a little bit more than what it is I'm doing right now. And it's not out of a desire to like necessarily better your life, although that could happen, but it's more out of a desire of just like, look, I feel like I've got more to contribute, so I want to figure out ways to contribute. And I think that's kind of the way that it was for me because I'd always worked. I was actually working in the church. I worked in the Christian church for about 10 years, and I did music and marketing and at two different times. So music for like the first 3 or 4 years and then marketing for the remaining ones. It was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed it a lot, but there was always something inside of me that was like, I'd like to do something in addition to this. I'd like to do something more. I'd like to build websites, or I'd like to be better at writing copy, or I'd like to do graphic design. And so, you just kind of like entertain that a little bit. You know what I mean? Like you get that little client here or that small job there and you work on it and you're like, hey, this is fun. And the extra money isn't too bad either. And so that's kind of what happened over the course of like 6 or 7 years. I just got a client here, a client there. I'd work on a website, this month, and next month I put together a PowerPoint presentation. It was enjoyable. Well, fast forward to July of 2014, I came back from vacation, and the first day back in the office, my boss, the pastor of the church brought me in and he said, hey, you're not going to be here anymore. We need you to move on. We don't need your position anymore. I was like, all right, whatever. So, I mean, there's lots of stuff I can say about that. But by and large, I just decided at that point, I was like, you know what? I work well with people. I really don't work well for people. And that doesn't mean you have to be an entrepreneur. It just means you have to have a boss or somebody that you're working with who respects you as the expert that you are in the field that you've studied so hard in. And so out of that spirit, I decided, you know what? I want to do my own thing. I want to be the guy who's brought in to solve problems and fix broken things. And so that's essentially what I did. I decided, you know what? I'll launch my own business. I'll tell all these little side clients that I'd been building up for a while, hey, I'm doing this full time. And the business just kind of grew from there. And like I said at the beginning, like you learn new stuff every single day. But yeah, that's kind of how, and I don't think people really make that decision of, okay, now I'm going to be an entrepreneur. It's kind of like they were pushed into it at some point in time. Very rarely is it ever a clean story where it all worked out the way that you thought it would. As a matter of fact, I've never met someone who said, yeah, it worked out exactly how I thought it would. And at this date, I planned on quitting my job. And at this date, I actually did. So, that's kind of how it happened for me.
Awesome. So you said it was December of 2014 or so?
July.
July. Okay. So it's been a year then,
yeah.
A year and a couple months and stuff. Are you glad that kind of happened and that you are where you are right now then, or?
Yeah, well, it was funny. So nobody likes to get fired. Even if you have a job that's shoveling dung from horses, and like you hate it, nobody likes to get fired. It's not something that's like, oh, I'm indifferent to it, whatever. I mean, maybe if you're 16, you don't really care because you're like, well, I didn't even want to work anyways. I want to go hang out at the football, stadium or whatever. I don't know. but nobody likes getting fired. And so there were a lot of things that I was unhappy with at my job, but even still to have someone come in and say, you're not needed, you're not wanted, we want you to leave. Like, that's not fun. And so there were a lot of tears, man. I'm like, I'm not embarrassed to say, like, I cried a lot every single day. You know, I cried, and the next day I cried a little bit less than the previous day, to eventually, you know, you'd have one bad day out of 7, then you'd have one bad day out of 14. And, you know, now it's one bad day out of every 6 months or so. But essentially I call it, being in a church, everybody tells you, oh, you know, there's a verse in the Bible, and they say, you know, God works out all things for the good of those who love him. And like, that's a great verse that people like to throw around, but the person who's going through like issues is never really quoting that verse. It's like not fun to quote, but everybody else says it to you because, you know, they want you to know, hey, I'm thinking about you and hopefully this is encouraging. Really, I didn't really need that. I never held it against anyone, but it just wasn't helpful. It wasn't until I talked to my buddy who owns a sub shop out here in Arizona. I called him up. I told him, dude, I got let go from my job. The first words out of his mouth was, dude, that blows. That absolutely sucks. Nobody likes to leave a place when it's not on their own terms. You were going to leave that place anyways. You were going to do your own thing. But when you're told that you have to do it, rather choosing to do it, nobody likes that. He goes, you know what? A year from now, you're going to look back at this. You're going to be like, that was the best thing that ever happened. You're going to be happier. You're going to be making more money, and you're going to be more fulfilled. But still, it just sucks because nobody likes to get fired. And it's like, that's exactly the way that it played out. I look back, I'm glad that I'm gone out of that toxic environment. The leadership is just not good leadership. And to be out from underneath, being underneath poor leaders and people who, you know, micromanage, and people who have an idea of what they want and then they expect everybody to just kind of fall in line. That's not an environment where I thrive. I thrive where people come in and they want me to challenge their ideas, and they want to challenge my ideas so that we come up through conflict. We come up with the best solution possible. And so, yeah, it worked out. I mean, I'm still dealing with stuff, man. Like, relationship is relationship, and relationship is messy. So I'm still pretty bitter, but I'm working through it, and I'm honest about my struggle. And I have people in my life who I'm, you know, real with, and they help me through it. So.
Interesting. I kind of had a similar situation, not to stage that, but like when I quit, when I quit Yelp and stuff, it was kind of interesting. Like my Yelp is a great company. And if I could like say one thing about Yelp in particular, is that like they have an excellent sales training program. So like, bar none, like best I've ever been a part of. But for me, it was kind of like time for me to leave. My mom had just passed away. I was like, I don't really want to do this anymore. And at that point, I gave my kind of 2 weeks, and at Yelp, it's basically 1 day notice. And my boss was like, well, Daryl, are you sure you want to leave? And he kept on selling me on why I should stay. And then like I started looking at the office place nearby, like Cahoots here in town. You probably heard of that. And and I went there. I was kind of like sold on like, hey, why I should stay, but like he got me to stay a second day. And then I was chatting with this another group online, Internet Business Mastery. I'm not sure if you're ever heard of that, but like I've followed the guys for years and years, and there's like a little Facebook group, and I put on there like, what should I do? Like my boss just kind of sold me on staying and stuff. I really want to leave and stuff. It doesn't feel right to me and everything like that. This one guy, I forget his name, but he commented that like, hey, your boss is already, if you're in sales, your boss is already looking for your replacement right now. He's going to like end up firing you in the next couple months or so. They're going to replace you. So leap now or leap later, but you're going to end up leaping one way or another. So that's neither here nor there, but that kind of resonated with me a little bit. So I wanted to share that real quick. Yeah. So what you do, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you kind of do social media specifically for the niche of churches and church communities. Is that right? Or
that's part of it. The thing about different niches and different industries is like, truth is all truth. Like if there's a marketing tactic that is good, that is moral, that is helpful, like it'll apply to almost any industry. And so one of the things that happens in, nonprofit and like faith-based organizations is they typically don't look at outside expertise. So let's just say a faith-based organization, whatever the faith might be, they typically look in-house and to people inside that industry for inspiration and direction and guidance and things like that. Because most people can't make the transition from this works in this industry, here's how it applies in my industry. And so that's kind of one of the things that separated me and really interested me, was going out and finding just marketing and email and social that worked anywhere and applying it to the context that I was in. And so definitely that's where I have a lot of my experience, and that's where I've had a lot of where I've done a lot of work. But the reason why I say what I said about learning from other places is because it's actually helped me go out, and I work with probably more non-faith-based organizations and personalities now than faith-based. I think I have two retainer clients that are churches, and then I have random churches contact me for this or for that. I help a lot of people who are in church communications. I do the translation for them. So I go out, I look at what, what Daryl's putting out there, and then I take it and I translate it for people in a different environment, in a different industry, so that they can understand it and they can figure out how it applies to them. And so, that's just one of the things that is unique about me that I kind of lean into. I have an email list, which has kind of gone cold a little bit. So I'm strategizing how to warm it back up, but it's called the Communicators list. And the whole idea of the Communicators list was to provide highly actionable, very relevant and timely information when it comes to marketing and communication. And I write it in such a way that people understand how to apply it into their industry. You don't feel excluded if you're not a church, but you don't necessarily feel like it's church centric. When you read it, it applies to whatever industry you're in, because they are marketing and communication truths. And like I said, truths are truths because they are true no matter what industry you're in. So that's kind of what I do. But really, anybody that needs to get unstuck and get clear about what they're trying to communicate and what they're trying to do, that's somebody who I can help. And I love helping them get unstuck. When you see that light bulb go off and it's like, oh my gosh, I've been wasting all this time. This is what I need to do. It's like, that's the ultimate, satisfaction that I get, is when you see that light bulb go off.
Awesome. And tell me, obviously you're in social media. Tell me about your experience with Periscope. My understanding is that you've been on Periscope since day one.
Yeah, man, I have. I wish I had been on, the Meerkat since day one. But my buddy Ryan Bolello, he kept sending me messages. Hey, are you going to be on Meerkat? Hey, are you going to be on Meerkat? And I was just like, I don't know what that is. And so eventually Periscope, I started using Meerkat. And then when Periscope came out, I was like, well, I'll hop on that because I'm late to Meerkat. I can be early on Periscope. And so when I started launching, I started like everybody else. I started with 0 followers. I started with a broadcast that was just me, like, staring at my phone, trying to, get settled or whatever. And then eventually I just started talking about things that I knew a lot about. There was something, Daryl. I went to a round table 3 years ago now, and I sat down at this round table with like 6 guys who are huge heroes of mine. Like, the fact that I was there, I felt really, I felt like the weak link at the table. And as I sat down and I listened to the conversation, there were 3 things that happened. First and foremost, as I listened to them talk about best practices for communication, I would hear them say, oh, that's a really good idea. We should suggest that. And then I'd sit back and I was thinking, oh my gosh, that's what I've been doing like the past 6 months in my job. And so I started feeling pretty good. I was like, man, I just naturally arrived at these things that these guys are like, wow, that's amazing. And then there were some things that are like, yep, that's the best way to do it. I've been doing it that way. And so, here's how I've improved on it. And so I felt challenged. I was like, yeah, I've been doing that, but I've been trying to improve on it. So I felt challenged. And then I felt really humbled. Because as I listened, they would say things like, yeah, I tried that. That's the worst idea ever. And I'm sitting there thinking like, oh my God, I'm trying to do that right now. Right. I'm not going to speak up and be like, I'm trying to do that. Like, okay, when I get back, I'm going to stop. And so I walked away feeling encouraged, feeling challenged, and feeling humbled. And the thing is, after I left that, I realized that, wow, they were really high on these ideas that I've already been doing. Maybe I have something to offer. Maybe I have something to share. Maybe things that come naturally to me don't come naturally to somebody else. So what if I just started talking about them? So that's what I started doing. I started using Twitter and I started using my blog to just talk about the things that I knew worked when it came to communication. When Periscope came out, it gave me an opportunity to lean into one of my greatest strengths, which is face-to-face conversation, which is one-on-one conversation. You might be encouraged by my tweets, but when we speak face-to-face, like if you either you're going to hate me or you're going to love me. And that's just one of the strengths of Periscope is it allows people to either hate you or love you in the moment. When I say hate, I mean just like, I don't want to listen to that guy. It just kind of bugs me. Or love you, like, oh my gosh, like whatever he says, I want to hear it because I feel like I get smarter and better as it goes. So that's kind of been my experience with Periscope, man, just trying to lean into one of the strengths that I know that I have, which is when I get to talking and when I get to seeing people.
Awesome. Let me ask you about that roundtable and like, yesterday I was interviewing one of my mentors, I guess I should say, other mentor here in the Valley. Her name is Q the brand or whatever. And she mentioned that she has a peer group. I call it a mastermind group. First of all, like, are you allowed to share who those 3 individuals that you looked up to were in that room, or would you could keep it on?
No, I mean, I can tell you who it was. You guys won't know any of them, but I can tell you who it was. It was a guy named Tim Peters, and I met him after I got my wisdom teeth pulled. I was sitting on my bed. I don't do well when I'm sick, man. I'm a big baby, okay? And so I was sitting on my bed trying to recover from having all 4 wisdom teeth pulled. I was in misery. I was just hating every single second. But I was like, whatevs, I'll just grab my iPad. And so I just started searching for communication and marketing, specifically for the church. And even 4 years ago, man, like there just wasn't anything out there for the faith-based industry. It was all non-faith-based. And I hadn't even come to the point where I could make that translation. I was looking for faith-based stuff. I was still on that milk type food. And so I found Tim Peters, and all of a sudden, I just started consuming everything that he wrote on his blog. So I really came to respect him. There was a guy named Scott McClellan, and Scott was the editor of a faith-based communication magazine called Collide. And it was my favorite magazine until they shut it down. So I gave him a hard time about that. There's a guy named Phil Bowdle. He's a creative director out in Atlanta, Georgia. Just fantastic creative mind, but he understands really how to put pieces together for one massive communication push. And there were a couple other guys in there too. So yeah, I mean, those are who they were, and it was a lot of fun. Awesome.
So let me ask you a little bit more about that, because that was actually going to be one of the questions I asked anyway. Is just your experience with, say, mastermind groups, roundtable, as you call it. Peer group is what other people call it. I think about like just started one called like goals with green tea or something. But what's your opinion about those, and like how do you first learn about that? Learn about that concept, and what has been your experience with it, I guess, is how I'll frame that question.
So I've never been a part of like an official mastermind, and that's not necessarily because I have an aversion to it. It's more along the lines of I've just never found the right people who I want to be in a group with, because in order to be in a mastermind, it's an interesting dynamic. Really the prime place to be is you never want to be a 10 and you never want to be with a 1. Really what you want is you want to be a 5. You want to be right in the middle of any mastermind that you're a part of. And it's a very tough dynamic to kind of connect, because if you're a 10, chances are you're going to be the one everybody's hitting up for information, and you're not going to learn anything. Whereas if you're a 1, you're not going to be able to contribute anything. All you're going to be doing is siphoning off of everybody else, which is fine if that's what they're okay with, but it's kind of a difficult place to be in. Really what you want is you want to be in a mastermind with people who are a couple notches above you and a couple notches below you, because at that point, you know, you've always got someone to learn from. You've always got somebody who you can teach, and everybody is no more than 5 clicks away from one another. And so, you know, finding that fit for a mastermind is kind of tough, and it's been tough for me. But what I've done is I've kind of latched on to different personalities and I just hit them up individually. And so, one of the things that becomes really famous in the entrepreneur world is people will call you up and be like, "Hey, Daryl, can I pick your brain?" And they don't mean anything mean by it, but what they're essentially saying is, "Can I buy you a $5 cup of coffee and get an hour of your time, an hour and a half of your time?" And so I have decided that I want to do that. I want to pick people's brains, but I don't want it to take any of their time. So what do? I make sure to find the people who I love the most on Periscope and I catch all their scopes, right? Mark Shaw is a great example. I catch just about every scope that Mark Shaw does. I've been missing them a little bit lately here just because I've been busy. But Mark Shaw is one of those people that I'll always watch his scopes. Blogs. I find the blogs that I really connect with, people who will always challenge me and never allow me to stay at status quo. And I pick their brain right by reading their blog. And really, it's much better sometimes to read a person's blog because they've already refined their thoughts. They've already challenged themselves and completed that particular thought and written it down. So you get the best of what they have to offer when you really decide to engage with their emails, with their blogs, with their Periscopes, whatever. So that's kind of what I've done. But I think that everybody needs community. As a matter of fact, I'm working on a blog post right now. Right before I hopped on, I was making a graphic, and the blog post. Let me see here. It's called "What Entrepreneurs Need to Realize the Dream." An unfortunate, and here I'll just read it real quick. An unfortunate reality of being an entrepreneur is that once you start talking to people about what you're planning, naysayers will appear, and they say things like, "You can't do it. You shouldn't do it. You don't have any good ideas." Sometimes they say different things, naysay things, trying to be helpful and help you get perspective. Some people just want to hate. Really what you need in your corner, and you know this, Daryl, I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know. You need people in your corner who's like, "You got this, man. Let's make this happen. Let's figure out how to get past the struggle." And so that's really what I try to look for in my relationships. Call it a mastermind, call it just a good friendship. That's what I look for, is people who basically come alongside and say, "Look, man, you got this. What do I need to do to help you succeed?" Yeah.
And now I kind of want to go more in that direction, because I've definitely had people in my life, they're close and not so close, that have discouraged me, I would say. And I definitely had people luckily, I kind of found out about Periscope around the third week or so, and met some people at the New Media Expo. I think I told you about that on Saturday when anyway, the group of people that I met there, we've kind of kept in touch, and we do boost each other up and help each other out. But have there ever been situations where just someone was just saying, "You can never do this right," or "You're just not good enough for this, and you don't really make sense in this fit," and you've kind of proved them wrong over a longer period of time? Do you kind of recall any of those situations?
Yeah, man. So I'm going to give you the answer. I'm going to give you the answer that you're not looking for, and then I'll give you the answer that you're looking for.
Okay, sure.
That happens every single day, man. Happens every single day. You're not going to make this happen. Who would ever buy from you? Who would ever listen to you? And the biggest critic is myself. That happens internally. That's where I hear that more than anything else. Now, people may look at me on Periscope, and I've got a healthy following. I'm very proud of the tribe that I've built on Periscope, man, because those are people who have indicated that I'm interested in something that you have to say, Dave. And that's a very big responsibility. I'm very proud of that because it was a lot of hard work, but it was a lot of listening. But even though some of those people may look at me and think, "Oh my gosh, he's got it together. If I could just do what he does, then all of a sudden, somehow I'll be whatever they perceive me to be." But the reality is every single day I have voices in my head telling me that I'm just not going to cut it, that I'm not going to be able to make it happen. And so really, being a Christian, I'm a Christian. I ain't going to go all Jesus on everybody, but that's a really huge part of my life, because my worth doesn't come from what I do successfully or how much money I make or what other people say about me. My worth comes from what other people are willing to do for me. And so ultimately, as a Christian, that's what Jesus did, died on the cross. Okay. So now that I said that, I really come back to the fact of I've been wired a certain way. I've been designed to be amazing at certain things. And so I'm honest about my gifting. I'm not modest about the things that I'm do well. I'm just honest about it because that's who I am. And so I have to come back to, what I believe I've been called to, what I believe I've been wired to do well, lean into that, and then just keep surrounding myself with people who say, you got this. That said, I don't think I've ever had somebody straight up come out and say, you're going to be a failure at this. I don't think that's ever happened. But what I do think is I have a lot of people who don't understand. And so through their questions, it's kind of discouraging. And the questions that I'll often see are questions like, well, what's your backup plan? All right. So that's a huge one. Another one is, well, I don't understand how that actually translates into money, or why are you wasting your time on this? Or I don't get what it is you're trying to do. And so then it kind of puts you on the hot seat to try to explain and articulate. And the truth is, I found this out about my wife. And so it's been really easy for me to apply it to others because, not everybody has the person closest to them in their life say, I just don't get it. Some people just won't ever understand. They just won't get it. They just won't be able to put together what it is that you're trying to do with, what it is you're actually doing. Like there's just no convincing them. So all you have to do is just change the conversation. Change the conversation because it's not going to go anywhere helpful. Now with my wife, I'll explain it to her and I'll ask her, do you need, because she's always concerned about security. Do you need me to explain anything else? Do you need to know anything about what I've said? Because I want her to know that I'm going to be bringing home money for us and you are not going to have to go get a job. You'll be able to raise our kids. So she has freedom to ask me, but for the most part, I try to stay away from those conversations when people just don't get it.
Right. No, my wife had similar concerns, at least at first. Let me go back to kind of Periscope and the Periscopers. You said that Mark Shaw is definitely one that you look up to. I do too. I can think of a couple other people other than yourself that I kind of watch on a regular basis. Who are those people for you on Periscope? And then you said there are some blogs that you take a look at too. Who are those bloggers that you kind of keep an eye out on?
Yeah, that's a good question. It kind of shifts. I really enjoy Mashable. I read Mashable because one of the things that I think makes us better at whatever we do is to not stay within our own little world. And so as much as I get frustrated with Mashable when they start, I just don't pay attention to politics anymore. And all of a sudden, since we're in a political season, Mashable just starts injecting a whole bunch of politics and it just annoys me. And I keep thinking about unsubscribing, but I just can't because they are so on the pulse of culture that I find every time I go in and I read the feed that Mashable produces, I'm learning about the people who I'm trying to help, and I'm learning about the people who I'm connecting with, and I feel like I'm getting inside their head and hearing the narrative that's going on inside. And so Mashable is a huge one for me. Michael Hyatt is one that I'll go to when I see stuff on his Twitter feed. I used to actually subscribe in Feedly, and then I feel like I kind of graduated from a lot of what he has to say, and I'm not his target market anymore. But he was a big one. Anything Gary Vaynerchuk puts out, I pay attention to. He's not in one place. He has a blog, but he's not in one place. He's kind of everywhere. One of the guys who I like reading is Jonathan Milligan. When I'm in the mode of kind of producing products, Jonathan Milligan is somebody that I like to listen to. So yeah, I mean, there's others. I'm trying to think. John Acuff. I like reading the stuff that John Acuff puts out. So yeah, that's just kind of a little bit of a tip of the iceberg there, if you will.
Okay, awesome. JB Howard is helping us out here.
I'll take notes on what you say, King. That's what he's known for. He shows up in your Periscope and he will make notes. JB, you know it. He will make notes of everything that you say.
I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I was just about to kind of type in there because Jonathan Milligan is kind of the only one of that list that I'm not familiar with there. So I'll have to check out his stuff a little bit. At this point, I'll go ahead and invite anybody else who wants to go ahead and have a seat. Feel free to have a seat. We're already kind of at the halfway point at this point. So if anybody wants to have a seat and talk to Dave as well, feel free to have a seat. I do think I have a couple more questions for you and stuff. And I guess another place that I'll kind of veer towards is kind of Blab and like live streaming. What are your thoughts on like kind of the future of live streaming, and like what platform do you like the best? There's Meerkat, Periscope. I've heard of Pure In and stuff, which is a like Blab competitor,
I think
what do you think?
the future of live streaming is bright, because anytime you can get FaceTime with people, that's always a desire, right? Like why do companies avoid having remote workers? Because they want them face to face, right? And so, we can't get together face to face as networkers and social media peeps, but this is our office, right? Periscope is our office. Blab is our office. And so the future is bright because people are smart. The future is bright because people shine when you get a chance to hear them talk about their passion. And live streaming is the platform where you get to see that, for most people, where you get to see that at its best. And so I don't see it as anything that's going to go away, and especially because there's niches that we know nothing about. And I think we may have been talking about this at our Arizona Periscope meetup last Saturday, but there's niches that we know nothing about. You go to periscope.tv/couch mode and hop into some rooms of people who you've never heard before, and you'll wonder how they have 350 people in their room. It's just amazing that there are so many people out there who are experts in their fields that you and I will never hear of. So the second that you think you've heard everything that there is to be heard or to be said on Periscope, you've met everybody there is to meet. It's like, okay, you're only fooling yourself. Just go to couch mode and you'll find some other people. So I think the future is bright. I think the big thing that we'll need to do as individuals is identify why we're using each social network, right? Why we're using each streaming network, because there's this temptation to turn Blab into Periscope, and there's this temptation to turn Periscope into YouTube, and there's this temptation to turn YouTube into something that it was never meant to be. And Periscope was never meant to be YouTube, and Blab is not meant to be Periscope or Meerkat. So it's really coming into defining, what is it that makes this platform unique, and how do I lean into that specifically? Not how do I prefer the way this looks, so I'm going to do what I do on Periscope over here. Like, it's just not going to work. You're looking at the screen right now. There's me, you, and then 2 empty spaces. That doesn't exist on Periscope, so don't try to make it look like Periscope. So I think there's a lot of potential for growth. Again, as long as there are people on Periscope, as long as there are people live streaming, it will be relevant, right? Because people are awesome. And that's where we learn the most, is from other people. So I think for me, I tend to get comfortable in one thing, and then I really don't tend to veer out. So it'll be interesting to see how Blab develops for me. I enjoy it. I feel like I get kind of sucked into it, and it's like a long thing that I never intended to be in, and then it just kind of goes on and on and on. Not to say that that's bad. It's just different. So it's going to be defining how I'm going to use it. But yeah, man, I mean, it's fun. I don't think anybody even knows how to predict what it will look like a year from now, because when you say he's been on it since the beginning, and since the beginning refers to the same year that you're in, there's really no history there. There's nothing to cling to. So.
Right. No, I totally agree with you there. It's just a brave new world here at this point. At this point, I'll probably go ahead and turn off the recording, unless somebody else wants to sit and ask a question on record at all. Feel free.
Jim Bob just posted in the comments. He's like, "Man, I'd love to come in and chat, but he's like, I'm at work." And so I totally get that. This is one of those things too. Like, I ain't trying to say you should come in and want to talk to me. That's not what I'm about to say. What I'm saying is, if you ever, like, when you have these opportunities on Periscope to connect with people or on Blab, this is where you actually get to pick people's brains for free. This is where you get to have your questions answered. Mark Shaw says, he goes, 1-to-1 costs. 1-to-many is free. And so anytime you're in a room and there's somebody in there who you really, enjoy listening to, if there's anything you want to ask, hop in, take advantage, because if you try to get in touch with them afterwards, it's probably going to cost you upwards of $125, $250, $300 an hour. And that's a whole lot more expensive than click and join on Blab. So.
Yeah. So I'll give it about another minute here. Like, somebody wants to ask a pressing question, you feel free and stuff. Otherwise, I'm going to turn off the recording part. and we'll probably chat for another 20 minutes or so, as when I have to get out of here and stuff. But yeah, if you guys have,
we did have a question coming here from Maxi Zappa 1. He says, guys, I need your help. We will be streaming a very important event all around the globe for our students, and we were thinking about using Periscope, but not sure how to implement it. Maxi, if you're still in here, I'd like to know a little bit more context. Who are your students? What is the event?
Here it comes.
Is it coming in? Oh, here we go. All right.
Yeah, here it comes.
What's going on, man?
Thank you. Hey, how you doing, man? Great. Yeah. Feel free to go ahead and ask that question.
Yes, basically, we have an like very important event in New York. It's called the World Business Forum, and basically we have universities all around the globe in Asia, Latin America, Europe. And we're already doing this for 3 years, but for this year we want to use to innovate a little bit and make the students to be more interactive with us. Basically I will be in New York. I'm the main person, the main technology person for the event, for the streaming. And yes, I think that Periscope is a very solid tool to use, because they could interact real time with the main speakers that are going to be in the event. For example, Kevin Spacey is going to be one of them, and will be great if the students could ask questions directly to him. But I don't know what. I mean, I know that the tool is great, but I don't know how to use it.
Dave, you want to fill this, and I'll give my 2 cents after you, or vice versa.
So I think the first thing, my initial reaction, just knowing what you've told about me, my initial reaction is to one, you could ask students who you do know, how would you want to engage in this environment? So talk about, what rooms are you going to be in? What would they be seeing if you were in there, and say, what would make this, so if it's Kevin Spacey talking on stage, what would make that more exciting to you? And so maybe ask some questions and get them to tell you what they actually think. Beyond that, depending on what your time is, I think if you give people an expectation of what to expect, so you ramp up, so you use Periscope, a few weeks in advance or days, whatever your timeline is, and you get the word out in other channels, basically saying hey, FYI, because you're only going to get to see what the main camera shows, we're going to be using Periscope. Here's what you can expect on Saturday. Between this hour and this hour, we're going to be in this room, and this is what you'll be able to see, and this is who you'll be able to interact with. And so you give them a little bit of an expectation of what they can expect, rather than just, the churches are famous for this, right? Churches, what they'll do is they will take their phone on a Sunday morning, they'll type in the title, "Our Band Rocks," and then they'll just stream what's happening on the stage. And it's okay, that's cool once, but I'm tired of that the 4th, 5th, 6th time. So if you can kind of give people an expectation and avoid the just holding it, streaming whatever's on stage, I think that's going to be a win. But ask some people and get them to tell you what they really want.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, I'll just give my 2 cents, and you could go ahead and throw it in the trash. But I would say if you have the ability, do both a Periscope and a Meerkat. And the reason I say Meerkat, even though I'm a Periscoper through and through, is that what I've learned from talking to other Meerkatters on this platform is that Meerkat tends to grow over time there. So if you're doing a seminar that's going to be more than 10 minutes or so, then the Meerkat audience might grow after the first 10 minutes or so, whereas the Periscope audience might start to drop. But it's up to you. You could go ahead and disregard that.
No, I think that's good. That's good advice to know, because you got to understand the idiosyncrasies of the networks that you're using. And I've had some people hop on. They're like, "Hey, our first Periscope's going to be streaming this meeting," and it's kind of well, who's going to watch if you haven't been putting stuff out there? Do you understand if that's going to be a fit for the people? So yeah, absolutely. Understand the platform that you're going to be using. And if something does grow over time and you're going to be streaming for 2 hours straight, then you have to take that into consideration. So hopefully that's helpful, man.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Yeah, basically the streaming is going to be 6 hours long. So we want to add something so the students don't get that, like bored about the whole thing, because it's 6 hours. Well, because what they usually do is like they meet in their auditoriums on each university, and they stream the event directly to their screens.
Right.
So maybe doing this interaction, it keeps them more engaged. That's exactly what we want to try to do.
It could, something that's really become popular in the last 3 years or so are these digital conferences. So it's exactly what you're talking about, but it's less of a simulcast, and it's more of a digital conference where there's no live area. It's all just being produced via the web. And so one of the things that those people have tried to do to make them better is think, okay, what would you experience if you were live at the venue, and then try to create that experience using other means. So like one example would be when you go to a conference, there's always a conference store. Okay, we'll create a conference store that's available on the sidebar or something when people are watching the stream. So I'm not saying do that, but I'm saying think that way. If they were there in person in New York, what would they be experiencing? Now, how can I create that experience using Periscope, or an element of that experience using Periscope? I mean, just for starters, I mean, this is really elementary. Don't go off of this, but like this is just an example of what I'm saying. Like at those conferences, you have to get up in the middle of the talks and you go use the restroom, grab a snack, and come back in. Okay, what happens when you go out to use the restroom and grab a snack? Well, you meet different people. So maybe you have different people out in the lobby in between saying, hey, this right here is so-and-so. They're coming from such and such. And, if you were here, you would want to ask them this question. So we're going to ask it for you. Something like that.
Great. Yeah.
Awesome. And David, looks like Jenny writes asked a little question there. Jenny, if you'd like to have a seat, I think it's over
Jenny,
here.
come in. I want to talk about this. Jenny, can you come in?
Feel free to have a seat. You want to jump in?
Let us know, Jenny, because if you want to come in, I'd love to share this one with you. I can share it either which way, but I want to give you a chance to come in and expand with me if you want. Is she still in here? Yeah, she's still in here. She may be working.
She's still here. Yeah, she may be working.
So I'll hop on the question. So essentially, yes, like there's a huge market. What she's saying here is there a way to upcycle what you do from Periscope to other ways? And like, yes. So, I mean, you can tell that I'm pretty hardcore. Like you should be recycling your content. So here's the deal. I'll tell you what I do. And then we, people can throw in ideas. But what I wind up doing is I wind up recording my Periscope. I take that scope, I edit it down to the best 2 to 5 minutes.
Here she comes.
And then once I edit that scope down to the best 2 to 5 minutes, hey, how's it going, Jenny? Are you here yet? Can you hear us?
She's coming, I think. Jenny, we're having a little bit of it. Are you driving right now, Jenny?
Yeah, no video.
We're having
her question is about business doing the transcriptions. Oh, actually running a business and doing that?
She must have had some problems there. I didn't kick her out. Yeah, she must have had some issues. Do you think
there's a market for transcriptionists to transcribe Periscope? Oh, okay, that's what she's saying. And yes, for all of the same reasons that I was getting into. Yeah, there's a huge market. The thing that I think would be great, because I use multiple services right now, the thing I would think would be awesome is if you could transcribe it, but also turn it into whatever that final person is looking. Because I use 2 different services right now. I use a service to transcribe, and I use a service for somebody to take the transcription and turn it into a blog post for me. All right. It's all my content. They just put it into a format that works well on a blog post. So if you could do one service that did both, I think that would be a huge win. And especially like pulling out tweets, creating images, there's all sorts of different things you could do to make it easy for entrepreneurs to hire you.
I totally agree with everything this man just said. So yes, yeah, absolutely. Max, do you want to jump in on that? And if anybody wants to have the fourth seat, feel free. I'm about to jump off in about 10 minutes here. So once I jump off, yeah, it's going to be done with Dave time here. So we'd love to hear some more feedback and more questions for Dave. So
I just have one last question.
Yeah, go for it.
Do you think is it useful to put everything that's happening on Periscope in our own streaming, so they basically can see themselves in the big screen, for example?
Give me a scenario. Like, are you thinking? Ask me the same question and ask it in a different way.
Okay, basically, let's say that you're watching like the Oscars, for example, to give an example, and then you can have like a picture-in-picture where you can see what's going on Periscope with all the questions and what's going on behind the cameras and stuff like that.
I think you could do that. I think it could, depending on when and how for how long and how often, it could be a distraction or it could be awesome. I think if you talk that through with some other critical thinkers, you could probably come up with a really cool way of making that happen, because, it could be a way, especially if you're going to try to use Periscope for the organization after the conference, it could be a way to really generate some unique buzz. So you kind of just like every 20 minutes, you pop up on the picture-in-picture just saying what's happening on Periscope right now, and then it pops off. So kind of like that.
Okay.
And we have Steven trying to join here.
Steven.
Right, Steven, feel free to come on in. I'm not sure what's going on, but yeah, we're waiting on Steven here to join in. Maximiliano or Max, or however you
Max is fine.
would prefer. Max, I got a question for you though. So you said Kevin Spacey is going to be at your event in New York City?
Yes, one of the main.
Is that right?
He's going to close the session. Yeah.
So my question for you is, like, how did you even get that relationship together? If you're the one running it, like, how did you get those connections together to get him to show up for an event?
Well, the thing is, we are basically, our company is associated with Wobby, which is the company that organizes the event. So they are the main people, like basically getting all these very important speakers together. Mm-hmm. And what we do is just like we have an associated with them, and we are also only doing the streaming part. We are not organizing the event.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Thank you for that answer. Steven is here. So Steven,
what's
go
happening,
ahead.
Folks? How you doing?
Hey.
All right.
The 2 cents that I wanted to throw in basically is to remind everybody that this didn't exist a handful of months ago. I mean, the basics of video and radio and all that existed, but streaming media did not exist in this way a handful of months ago. And so my whole thing is to tell people, don't stop dreaming. Whatever you can dream up, you could probably find a way to do either on Periscope or Blab or something. Anything that you could do with people, you can do on this platform. And that's what makes it so incredibly powerful, because you can do something with someone in a different part of the world, different part of the country, just through this platform, as easy as sending a text.
Yeah.
And so it's that freedom to dream and think of new ideas and new ways. That's the thing that I just want to throw into the conversation. Because, I mean, frankly, when I first discovered Periscope was because of Dave. I was following Dave. I used to do church communications. Well, I still do, but I had a job doing church communications. And at the Riverside Church in New York City, great big giant church.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
They were going through transition, so I was helping take them from the old broken way of doing things to a new time of prosperity. And left that, started doing my own freelance work again, which is what I was doing before, and following Dave's church marketing stuff and all his other things, and found him on Periscope, and then that led me to here. But it's just fascinating to think that when I left Riverside, which was May of this year, the social media world was very, very different than it is now. And I think that's crazy exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. And you know, for me, I love when new technology comes out. I love when coders and everything, they figure out how to put things together and introduce something new. Because for me, it's just like, all right, let's hop on this. Let's see how it develops and let's see what voices emerge as a result of it. Because it, you know, it's just, you would never hear certain people. And here's something else. You wouldn't hear certain people if social media didn't exist. I mean, we know that. That's duh. But right. I've noticed there have been voices who I couldn't stand on Twitter. Not like I don't like you, but just like, oh, man, for some reason, it just bugs me. And you guys know what I'm talking about. That one person or those few people, it's like for some reason, they just get underneath my skin. So I'm going to unfollow. I don't need that in my life. I've found that I actually quite enjoy them on Periscope. And so it's like you get another, you know, what other people have said, you get the other 80% of communication when live streaming comes into play. And you're able to almost palette them in a different way because of the other 80% of communication. And so, you know, you take that and apply it to the fact of who knows what is going to be happening in the next 12 months. And you're going to have new voices emerging who you've never heard of or who maybe you didn't really particularly care for before, but all of a sudden it allows them to shine in a way that they haven't been able to. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's right. And this format's going to let people find their voices when before that they couldn't. I mean, you know, for me, you know, many years ago, I might have been a writer, but I'm definitely not a writer anymore. So it's much harder for me to sit down and write a blog. You know, the occasional pithy tweet, yeah, okay, fine. But this kind of thing, like Dave, when I can sit and talk to somebody and look at them and have that kind of human interaction, that's when I do much better. You know, so it's just incredibly valuable. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at this point, I'm going to drop out myself, but I'll still hang out here so I can add one other person if they want to ask another question.
I actually have a call in about 3 minutes, so I'm going to have to go too. So it might be a good idea. I mean, if anybody wants to hang out, they can, but I'll be taking off too.
Okay. All right. I'm going to just jump out real quick.
I was just going to say thank you guys for all the advices. And
yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Somebody in the chat room was asking if you have a link for your event. So if you haven't put that there yet, Max, maybe throw it in there and so people can check it out. So yeah, sure. Glad you were here, man.
We don't the event for the World Business Forum is a private event.
Okay.
It's expensive to be there, so we cannot share that you know link. But there's another